The New England Indie Authors Collective presents Boston Undercover. 4 local Boston writer and storytellers, Jason M. Rubin, Brandy Ross, Judah LeBlanc, and Jenny Peaver, present their take on the Boston you haven't seen in the guidebooks. The way we've seen it, lived it, and written about it. For the real Boston experience, you need to go undercover with the New England Indie Authors Collective. Come join us. So, the New England Indie Authors Collective, Jenny Peaver, Judah LeBlanc, Randy Ross, and Jason M. Rubin, the 4 of us would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us here on Zoom for Boston Undercover, a look at hidden Boston, the Boston beyond the guidebooks. So we're going to take you on kind of a unique, interesting tour through a bunch of quirky experiences in Boston and Massachusetts. So first of all, I want to thank the folks at Canvas Fine Arts. Thanks, Suzanne. And again, thank you for coming tonight. And I'm going to first introduce Jenny Peaver, who is going to be talking about the Boston art scene and how it's changed a lot since she moved here back in the 1980s. She's going to take you on a quick tour and give you a peek at her current work. So Jenny, take it away.
Thanks, Judah. Welcome, everybody. I'm here at Canvas Fine Arts at 260 Harrison Ave in Boston. And as Judah was saying, the art scene has changed a lot since the 80s when I moved here. And back then, it was Newbury Street, and there were a lot of chic little galleries, and it was a scene, and it was very cool. And I belong to the Cowboy Society, which is the oldest art association in the country, and it's still having a lot of vibrant shows right now. But everybody, all the galleries have pretty much gone away, and the ones that have stayed are showing artists that are very well established or dead. And so in the 90s, all of the galleries moved to South Street, and Boston had a reputation as being kind of staid compared to New York. So this was an attempt to recreate Soho, and Soho in Boston. Only the problem was that nobody came. And then everybody moved to the South End, and 450 Harrison Ave opened, and it was filled with artists renting studio space, and there's First Friday openings every month, and it became this huge party, just massively successful. And all the galleries started moving down here. And now this building, 260, which is across this cool little walkway, is filled with galleries too. And you can come down on First Friday and stroll around. It's open, even with COVID, it just reopened. And eventually, Open Market will be coming back, which is this great crafts show on Sundays with food trucks and all kinds of things like that. There's a farmer's market that happens. So, you know, if you're from out of town, you might kind of look for that, and it's something that you think is really enjoyable. So while you're here with me, this is my show, and it is here until September 30th. It's called Resilience, and the reason that it is called Resilience is because I used to go for walks with my dog to this beautiful garden, and there was a koi pond there, and I took pictures, lots of pictures of the koi with my phone, and took it home and started painting them. And this is one example of this triptych, and these are obviously koi fish, but koi fish, I came to understand, is a Japanese symbol for resilience. And so that's why the show is called Resilience. But I also think that that is a personal symbol for me, and it is a personal symbol right now for all of us with COVID. And so I hope you'll come and visit my koi and you know, take one home with you if you like. You don't even have to feed them. So before I did that though, I was into a whole thing on cell phones and technology, and I used to do a lot of paintings of, quote, the spaces between us, and I would go around shooting photos of people in Boston talking on cell phones, being kind of alienated from each other, just everybody in their own space. So I'm not going to take you back to see all of them, but there's a big one over there, and that one is called Retirement. And you can see that they're both lost in their own little worlds of technology and not exactly what I would consider togetherness. But anyway, what's important to me when you do a painting is it's not just about capturing a photograph or capturing an image. For me, it's important to think about, rhythms and composition and color and contrast and all those things that make a painting speak to you. So I have put a lot into this. They're not photographic, but they're my interpretation of resilience, and I hope you'll come and enjoy it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny. That was great. It was great to see some of your art. So one of my Boston area, kind of greater Boston area experiences has been going to Providence Town, which is, as you may know, on the tip of Cape Cod. And I happened to be there a number of years ago during Carnival Week, which is kind of a wild week. It's always, I think, the third week in August. And it's capped off by a big parade that they have, kind of like a Mardi Gras on the Thursday of that week. And every year they have a particular theme. The year I was there was Cowboys and Indians. So there were a lot of gay cowboys and gay Native Americans, and they took it in all kinds of directions. As you can imagine, it was kind of wild. I happened to be there taking a writing workshop, and I'm going to tell you about my experience there. It's Carnival Week in Providence Town, an unlikely time for me to show up on the tip of Cape Cod. Still, I have the time and no one to spend it with, so I decided to sign up for a creative writing class at the Fine Arts Work Center over in the east end of town. You see, taking a course in Providence Town would bring me together with handsome men, fellow artists and writers. Here are my classmates. Tessa, a 40-ish hippie filmmaker from Austin. Tina, who's finishing up her MFA at Emerson. Joan, a 60-something housewife with a husky smoker's voice and cough to match. Randy, with an I, a performer on the women's circuit. Deborah, Dina, Laura, Lisa, these women, like their names run together in my mind since, as you recall, I was hoping to meet a hot man. There is one other fellow beside the married straight instructor in the class. That man with his dark chocolate skin, white teeth, and tight muscular build is nice looking and about my age. My gaydar beeps, and I imagine a liaison between us until he mentions his partner of 15 years, who turns out to be white, lean, and equally good looking. After several days in town, I slipped into a store called Body Body. I'd been there the previous fall during a sale when their prices were adjusted from utterly ridiculous to merely expensive. See, Body Square's clothes are designed for guys with biceps like melons and butts like cantaloupes, not for thin, middle-aged guys like me. Their clothes are designed to expose one's physique. Sheer mesh t-shirts and microscopic swimsuits. Heading back to the sale rack, I discover that 50% of $200 is still a lot of money. But eventually I find a tank top, size medium, sky blue. A bit short, a little snug, but well designed to display what little muscle I have. A few Minutes later, I'm out on Commercial Street, the town's main drag. Looking around, my eyes bug out at the sight of one mouth-watering beauty after another, their buff pecs and butter-smooth skin on display for all to see. Meanwhile, I feel like a human blood clot, an obstruction, unworthy of their notice. I'm not looking for a one-night stand. I'm simply trying to be noticed by one of these handsome studs strutting by in their tank tops and cargo shorts. As I walk against the flow of traffic, most of the men are heading over to tea dance at the Boat Slip, a local bar. I understand for the first time the frustration of teenage girls. Like them, I straighten my shoulders, pull back my back, and thrust out my chest, determined to fill out my version of a training bra. For a few moments, I feel better about myself. You see, my chest and flat stomach remain north of the equator, and I still have bladder control. But my pecs, the ones I've been developing slowly over the last year at Workout World, barely make an impression against the cotton fabric of my new shirt. As I scan the crowd, black hair, blonde, brunette, all bronzed and sculpted, I pull the shirt down, forcing it to fit my body. But there's still a gap at chest height, as if the shirt were waiting for me to grow into it. I'm a 50-something man, striving for youth, lusting after men a decade younger. But the only look I gather is from a Dustin Wiesen character about my age, leaning against the storefront. Still, he examines me thoroughly with a look that might be lust or simply curiosity. Eventually, the shirt chafes against my dry, sunburned skin and the air cools, and I changed into a loose-fitting button-down number that allows me to breathe normally and walk naturally. The next week, I'm back at the gym doing the pec fly and the chest press. Next summer, when I return to Providence Town, I hope to finally fill out my new shirt. In the meantime, I welcome fall with its cooler weather and looser, less revealing clothes, which leave my flaws and assets to the imagination of the viewer. Thank you. So next up, we have Jason M. Rubin, and he's going to be talking about food. There's a famous toast given in Boston back in 1910, which goes, and this is good old Boston, the home of the bean and the cod, where the Lowells talk to the Cabots, and the Cabots talk only to God. So Jason M. Rubin is here to discuss his favorite Boston food item, which is neither the bean nor the cod. Jason?
Thank you, Judah. Hello, everyone. Yes, favorite Boston foods. Now, you might think lobster, steamers, chowder, maybe a Faneuil Frank, Boston baked beans, Boston cream pie, Necco wafers, a favorite of mine. My teeth can't handle them anymore. None of those are my favorite Boston food. The food that I like best, that I associate with Boston, is actually a sandwich with its origins in the country of Chile. It's called a chacarero. How did I get introduced to a chacarero, and what does it have to do with Boston? Years ago, I was working in downtown Crossing, and back then they used to have all these push carts selling, food items or other items and stuff. I don't think they have them anymore. I don't think they're around in the COVID era. But back in the day, they had all these push carts. And I was out one day looking for something for lunch, and I saw a push cart with a huge long line behind it. And I figured, well, these guys must know what they're talking about. So I got in line, and I waited and waited. As I got to the front of the line, I saw that they were buying a chacarero. And the sign said what was in it. And I was like, I'm not sure I really want this, but I've been waiting in this long line. I have to get back to work. So I bought a chacarero, I ate it, and became an instant convert. Today, like I said, they don't really have the push carts anymore, but they do have a brick and mortar store, which is at 101 Arch Street, which is still downtown. And they have big lines there as well. And it's interesting because that's not the only sort of South American vibe that I remember from back in the day when I worked downtown. There was Andean band that would play on the streets there. They were from Peru. Their name was Inca Son. And I believe they're still around. They call themselves New Inca Son, which I guess is like Inca Son, the next generation. Andean music, the traditional Andean music, is played with big, big drums and panpipes and a little stringed instrument called a charango. And the music is really captivating. I always loved it. And in fact, years ago, again, my ex-wife and I, for our honeymoon, we went to Ecuador. And this Andean music plays throughout the Andean countries. So one of my goals of that honeymoon was not only to survive, but to go to a record store and try to find this Andean music that I played. And we found a record store in Quito, and we went in, and they were blasting the music of U2. And I was having culture shock, because I don't even like U2 in this country, let alone fly all the way to Ecuador to listen to it. And in my sort of fractured high school level Spanish, I tried to let the people there know what kind of music I was looking for. And eventually it got through, and they said, música folclórica, which is basically if I went to Newbury Comics here and asked for a CD of Appalachian minor songs. So a bit of a disappointment there, but they do still play around Boston. So back to this country, back to Boston. And by the way, staying with the theme of music, however, Esperanza Spalding, you may know her. She is a Grammy-winning jazz bassist and singer. She actually went to Berklee College of Music here in Boston. And on this particular album, she has a song, you probably can't see it, Chacarera, the feminine form of the sandwich. That's how impressively Boston it is. So I wanted to show you the sandwich. I wanted to break it down and explain why it's such an amazing sandwich. However, even though their website says that they're open till 6 o'clock, and their Facebook page says they're open till 6 o'clock, when I walked down there today at about 4 o'clock, they were closed. Because of COVID, all stores are closing a little earlier. They close at 3 now. I got to tell you, I'm starting to get a little tired of this COVID thing. So what did I do? I walked to Whole Foods. And for the amount of money that probably represents, 2 times the annual GDP of the country of Chile, I made my own chacarero sandwich. And so, whoops, I'll clean it up, don't worry. So basically, they make a homemade roll. This is not a homemade roll. It's not going to be as good, but homemade bread, and you get either grilled chicken or grilled steak. I like the chicken, and then you have a slice of Munster cheese. Whole Foods didn't have Munster cheese. It's too ordinary a cheese, so this is cheddar. Avocado, this green gook avocado. I actually used guacamole. A tomato, and then the kicker. This is the thing that makes a chacarero a chacarero. Green beans. You may think that's disgusting. You may think that's disgusting. It's not. It's the kicker. It adds the tang, the sweetness. It has the crunch and the freshness. So again, I just made myself in desperation, a couple hours before coming here. So we'll see how it is. I was prepared to tell you that it wouldn't hold a candle to it, and that you have to go to the source to get the real thing. That's pretty good. So, sorry to talk with my mouth full. But, again, come to Boston, 101 Arch Street, the Chacarero sandwich. It's delicious. The best in Boston. Thank you.
So one of the things is, part of Boston culture is these coffee shops. A lot of, the hipsters, what we used to call yuppies back in my day. Now they're hipsters, millennials, and older people who should get real jobs, but work remotely and do something in tech, which I never understand. They hang out at these coffee shops. So many of these hipster shops are in Somerville, which has become kind of the new hip place to be, which, again, if you know the Boston area, Somerville is across the river from Boston, next to Cambridge. And so this piece from our colleague, the storyteller and actor and novelist Randy Ross, is about a 50-something guy and his ex-girlfriend who meet at a coffee shop in Somerville to talk or process, but hipsters interrupt the couple's plans. So here we go.
Great. Thanks, Judah. So yes, Judah mentioned I live in Somerville, which is ground zero for hipsters. And the one thing hipsters like more than anything is drinking coffee with other hipsters. And this particular piece, it's a couple, they've broken up. They're in a coffee shop, a fictitious coffee shop called Crank. And the woman's name is, the ex-girlfriend's name is Jackie. I arrive at Crank 30 minutes early to reacquaint myself with the terrain, to secure a perimeter and dig in. The decor is half and half. The seating area suggests a boho bookstore, post and beam, exposed brick, leashed dogs and unleashed children. Behind the counter, the coffee sequencing lab, glass and stainless, beakers and tubing, presses and grinders. Are you supposed to drink this stuff or snort it? The tables up front are filled with people sitting alone, some still in their pajamas, backpacks on the opposing seats, drinking Crank beverages and munching food from Tupperware containers brought from home. On their tables, iPads, USB hubs, external hard drives, wireless mice, and cables strung to too few power outlets. I spot a guy packing up and idling, and I spot a guy packing up and idle by his table. A bearded dude in a knee-length nightshirt and fluffy slippers comes from the other direction and idles too. He has hairy ankles and several inches on me. I look up and attempt to stare him down. Another table opens up nearby. "No worries, sir," the dude says. "I'll take this one." A few minutes later, he comes over. "Excuse me, sir." He gestures to the outlet under my table. "Mind if I plug in?" "No worries, bro," I say without looking up. A woman with a stained hoodie, 2 kids and a baby in a stroller set up at a long table nearby. She heaves the baby out of the stroller and starts to breastfeed. I feel marginalized, othered, and lonely. 2 older kids, boys of about 3, stand on their chairs and start banging the table. The mother raises her voice. "Pele, Beckham, sit down, now." Jackie always joked that hipsters like to name their kids after foreign soccer players. She also joked that there was a simple solution for overpopulation and global warming: eat more kids. Someone blonde and slender enters my field of vision. She's wearing a black leather blazer over a charcoal jersey dress, black nylons, black ankle boots, and crimson lipstick. A thoroughbred in a petting zoo. Jackie's breasts seem higher, her ass firmer. When our eyes meet, her expression goes flat. Man the battle stations. Little Pele is in the aisle playing with something in his diaper, blocking Jackie's path. The mother, still nursing, apologizes and shouts at the boy, "Sit down, Pele, don't make me come over there." I smile and say to Jackie, "Stir-fried brat with oyster sauce?" She drops her bag on the table and does not smile. Maybe she's having a bad day. She sits down and back in her seat and crosses her arms as if she's expecting something. We stare at each other. Large black, I ask when I can no longer take the silence. Chamomile, she says in a low voice. I'm on the wagon. Jackie, on the wagon? Who has she been fucking for the last week? When I return with our beverages, the dude is plugging a second device into the wall socket next to Jackie's knee. He ignores me and goes back to check the rig on his table, then comes over again and says to me, I'm sure it's not intentional, but the plug keeps coming out. Look, bucko, I say, you've got 2 cords strung under my table. I'm just trying to enjoy a coffee with my ex-girlfriend. I'm surprised by my gusto. Maybe it's the caffeine, or maybe it's because one of Jackie's favorite activities was messing with the millennials. The guy continues to stand there and says nothing. I say, you know, in some states, fighting an elderly person is a hate crime. He looks confused and glances at Jackie for a verdict. Instead, she offers to switch tables with him. Traitor, I say to her when we stand to move. No laugh, no smile, nothing. Pele and his family have been joined by more children and another mother who immediately distributes crayons and paper to the little horde. The mothers blather on about tiny houses, heirloom avocados, hackathons, ethically sourced hammocks, Trump and Ponzi, Trump and Caligula, Trump and Mel Gibson. I lean towards Jackie and cup my mouth. Are you listening to that? I haven't been following the news lately, Jackie says. Her voice trails off. She does not smile. I want to reach for her hand, but don't. After we split up, Jackie says, looking over my shoulder, my mother suggested I volunteer somewhere to get out of the apartment. So I'm helping out at Spare Change, the newspaper street people sell in Harvard Square. She takes out a flyer from her purse and hands it to me. They have literary events and readings. I hold the flyer close. I hold it far. Jackie sighs and finally hands me her reading glasses. You should go sometime, she says. She says I should go, not we should go. A middle-aged couple wearing skinny high-water jeans and hoodie wife beaters that say, I can't adult today, passes by. They both have loud tattoos on their shoulders. Jackie watches them, shakes her head and says, I propose a murder-suicide if we ever end up like that. We? Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. So that's a little snapshot of coffee shop life here. Gives you a taste of what it's like to be in Hipster Central, otherwise known as Somerville. Keeping the coffee shop theme going, our next piece is Jenny is going to be doing a piece from her Boston-based tech thriller, OMG. As you probably know, Boston is a great technology hub, and coffee shops are an integral part of the scene. And so Jenny is going to be giving you a taste of OMG. Take it away.
Hi. So this is my book, OMG. But before I get to that, I want to tell you a little bit about my favorite coffee places in Boston and Cambridge, just in case you want to try it. So I've lived in both areas, and downtown Boston has some great places. Cafe Nero, super for fireplaces and couches and some tech talk at the long tables. The Thinking Cup in the North End is a favorite of mine. Great place. Jaho or Yahoo, depending on your orientation, I guess, is good if you want to spend about a half an hour waiting for your coffee, which goes through all of the tubes and the whatever. And but it's worth it. It's very good, and they've got super croissants. But going across the bridge over to Cambridge, you could get a great cinnamon bun at Flower in Kendall near MIT. Or if you go on 3rd Street and go to Tate, you could get these giant roses, these pastries. They're wound around, and I still dream about them. And there's shashuka, which is a great brunch dish. Eggs baked in tomato sauce. It was originated from the Israeli army. And they knew what they're doing, I'll tell you. So that's worth trying. But if you go down the street a little bit towards Main Street, where CIC is, which is a Cambridge Innovation Center, you're in startup land. And across the street from there is where Voltage used to be. And I used to live right there, and I used to go to Voltage a lot and watch people interact, and where they're playing white walls and playing tables, and everyone's, banging out code and, wheeling and dealing. And it was the inspiration for a short story, which actually turned into a Boston-based tech thriller. So I'm going to read you just a little bit about that and the vibe of Voltage, which, by the way, I changed it to Jolt in this book. So this chapter is called Simon Says, and it starts Jolt was Kylie's favorite coffee shop and the unofficial epicenter of the startup world in Kendall Square. As usual, it was humming with an undertone of excitement and productivity, and Kylie knew she could get inspired just by breathing the caffeinated air, the perfect setting to plan her new business, or what she hoped would save her from destitution. As she sipped her coffee, hoping the caffeine would handle the headache that was brewing, a boyish-looking young man approached her table. He was lanky and awkward, balancing a laptop and a cup of coffee. "Hi, I'm Simon Whitehead," he said. "Can I sit down for a minute to talk?" "I'm kind of busy. What's this about?" She gave Simon a once-over. He hardly looked old enough to be drinking coffee. His baby face showed sparse whiskers reminiscent of stray weeds popping out of the sand. He had the look of a precocious and unkempt middle schooler. Simon slid into the seat anyway. "How's your business plan coming?" Kylie sucked in her breath. She hadn't told anyone. "How do you know about that?" "So, I consider it my job to know what's going on here. I picked it up on the Wi-Fi." He gestured wildly in the air with a hand, as if her business plan was floating up there. "Looks to me as if you're going to need a developer. And this definitely looks like something that's up my alley." Kylie gulped and nodded. "Fair enough. Evidently, you've got some hacking chops. What are you, a hacking predator hanging out at Jolt looking for projects?" He nodded and smirked, something like that. Located at the edge of MIT, Jolt was where laptop-toting techies banged out code and salivated over venture capitalists who might fund their startups. She supposed it was a perfect place for a hacker to look for work, but it seemed he was pushing it. And that is part of the beginning of the first chapter of OMG, and it kind of goes downhill from there. So check it out, and I hope you get yourself a good cup of coffee. Thanks.
So after that visit to the coffee shops, we're going to shift things a little bit. So one of the big, there's a bunch of events that happen on Boston Common over the course of time, and so one of the things that happens is something every fall, although I don't think it happened this month, but it's usually, I believe, in September. It's called the Hemp Fest. And as many of you may know, recreational marijuana is now legal in Massachusetts. I was never one who was particularly interested, rarely partook, but I did have a moment. And I call this piece 60 going on 20. It was mid-afternoon on a sunny, warm September day, and yet I was inside my apartment, crouching on the floor, wondering if I was losing my mind. I was lightheaded, dizzy, and felt disconnected from my own body, as if I were watching my movements in slow motion, on videotaped delay. Meanwhile, my heart was pounding, my mouth was dry, and I was definitely alone, wondering how I'd gotten myself into this mess. The cause of my discomfort was not hard to find, even in my disordered frame of mind. You see, a few hours earlier, I'd left Arlington Street Church, where I sing in the choir on Sunday mornings, and headed out for a walk around the public gardens. Approaching Charles Street, I could see some kind of event taking place on Boston Common with lots of millennials, looking like 2010's version of the hippies of my youth. As I crossed the street, it became obvious that I'd wandered into the Hemp Fest, or some other celebration of marijuana in all its forms. The newly legal substance was being celebrated and promoted by merchants who offered pot in all its incarnations. One could smoke it, eat it, slather oneself in oil, or flavor their favorite variety with essential oils. Snaking through the crowd, I found the whole thing overwhelming. Too many varieties, too much jargon, and too many folks who seemed to know what they were doing. I hadn't smoked pot in 10 years, and the only time I smoked semi-regularly was the summer of 1977, which I spent in an internship in San Francisco while I was in college. You see, one of my roommates worked at City Hall and bought his pot from a dealer there. And our evening entertainment often consisted of smoking some weed through Greg's small pipe, attacking a box of wheat thins, and then going on a cable car ride, hanging off the running board and admiring the city lights. If that sounds tame, it was, at least for me. You see, taking a few hits or a few puffs was the limit of my marijuana use. The drug simply made me drowsy and gave me the munchies. It was clear walking around the festival that marijuana had come a long way. There were lots of new style pipes, inhalers that seemed designed for vaping, another fad I don't really understand, and a tent where one could go through a brief interview and get a prescription for medical marijuana. It was a hot, humid day, and I've never been one for putting unknown substances into my body. The summer of '77 was an aberration for me. And even then I was careful not to smoke too much. But several of the merchants were selling edibles, and though I'd heard about marijuana brownies and cookies back in the day, I'd never tried them. So I stopped at one of the booths, which featured small cookies in plastic vials. They looked a bit like small macaroons, and the sketchy-looking guy behind a display offered me a free sample. So I took one. It was small and looked harmless enough. According to the merchant, it contained CBD, a different type of marijuana that would relax me without spacing me out. I sat around, hung out, and felt nothing. So I went to another booth, which featured pre-packaged gummies. The gummies looked like candy, but according to the 20-something man who was selling them, the whole package, contained about as much marijuana as 3 or 4 joints. I did the math, not very well as it turned out, and popped one in my mouth. I walked around some more, and as I prepared to head home, I took another one, since I only felt tired, the result of a poor night's sleep and nothing more. I was almost back home when the edibles hit. Evidently, they take time to have the desired effect, or in my case, to get much more than I bargained for. Suddenly, I wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't. Once I stumbled up, or actually crawled up to my 4th floor walk-up apartment, I finally call my friend Bill, explaining that I had mixed 2 different types of marijuana, ingested way too much THC, and might need to go to the hospital. Or had I imagined the whole thing and hadn't really called him? 1 minute felt like an hour, and I wondered if I'd had a psychotic break. I remember hearing back in the day that marijuana could make one paranoid, but now I was experiencing paranoia firsthand, my bad trip courtesy of those gummy bears. I called Bill 3 times as he assured me that I wasn't cracking up, that I had called before, that I wasn't going to die, and that I would get through this. Once he arrived 15 minutes later, which felt like 15 hours, he took me for a short walk around the neighborhood, though I don't remember much, other than laying down on the tree lawn of a nearby building, and then somehow getting back to my apartment where after several more hours, I came back to myself. In the interim, my friend read the package explaining that I'd taken a really high dose, something I'd already surmised by my body's reaction and my mind's distortion. By Monday morning, I was no longer high, but I wasted 2 more days as I slowly tried to regain my energy and some sense of balance while recovering from my trip. Now, looking back on the whole experience, I'm surprised, almost shocked by my naivete. I'm a 60-year-old man making the rookie mistakes I could and perhaps should have made back when I was 20. Still, a week later, I can say that I emerged relatively unscathed, and that recreational marijuana will probably not be part of my golden years. So now Jason is coming back, this time to talk about the Boston area's best used record stores and the kind of people you'll find.
Thank you again, and hello again. More show and tell for you. Used record stores. I love used record stores. I love everything about them. I love going to them. I love spending hours in them and dollars in them. If you've ever seen the movie High Fidelity or read the book High Fidelity, perfect descriptions of what used record stores are like. See, they're not just places to shop, to buy used records. They're places to talk, to meet people, to share information, recommend things, get recommendations, learn about obscure artists or interesting pressings of albums that are obscure and possibly quite valuable. It's a place to learn and build a very sort of geeky community of music freaks. And there's just always a certain smell inside a record store, and some of that is the vinyl and the cardboard, the old cardboard, and some of it, frankly, is the people who go there. But they mean well, and really, I find that being in a used record store just engages all your senses. Like I said, there's the smell. Okay, you smell the cardboard, you smell the vinyl, and then there's a visual aspect to it. You look at really interesting cover art, and of course, if you're going to buy a used record, you need to make sure there's no scratches. So you take it out, you hold it by the edges. You don't want to get fingerprints on it. Get it to the right angle in the light, and you see that it is a mint condition album, which is what you want. And then there's that's smell and vision. So there's touch. There's always old cardboard has nice texture to it. That's really nice. And then the hearing, of course, they're always playing music at used record stores. Sometimes they'll even, if you're interested in an album and you'd like to hear it, sometimes they'll even play it for you. That only leaves what? Taste. I guess there's really nothing in a used record store you can taste. However, my friends and I, when we were in high school, our tradition was we'd get paid on Fridays. Saturdays, we'd go to Kenmore Square in Boston. We'd go to Nuggets. That was our favorite used record store back in the day, and really the place where we cut our teeth in becoming, music collectors. And we would spend anywhere upwards of like $50, which in those days could get you anywhere from 5 to 50 records. And after we were done with our shopping, we would drive back to Newton, where we all lived. We'd go for Chinese food. Luncheon specials as a way to celebrate our shopping adventure. Then we would go back to one of our houses, and everybody would go around and get to play a side of one of the records that they bought. And then we would all scatter to our individual houses and spend the whole day playing records. This is why the people who go to used record stores have a certain, scent about them. So I'd like to show you some albums that I've gotten. This was actually, I got this in Portsmouth. Portland, Maine. It's great when you go to other cities, other states, and can buy used records there. I mean, where else but in a used record store are you going to get Drums, Drums, A Go-Go by Hal Blaine, who is the greatest session drummer of all time, and frankly, grew up in Holyoke, Massachusetts. True. There's very rare things you'll find in a used record store, things that, you know, original pressings were special and then the reissues of it not so. This is from 1967, the Rolling Stones sort of psychedelic album, their Satanic Majesty's Request. There's this 3D cover, lenticular plastic. I love the word lenticular. And it's just really cool. And you never would find this, you know, in a regular record store. This probably cost me like $20, $30, which is what, you know, ordinary vinyl costs these days. Another type of 3D, this is Grand Funk Shining On. You can tell it's a 3D cover in the classic red and blue glasses sort of style. And the cool thing about this one, I have another version of this where the glasses are removed so you can, you know, see the 3D. This I got for collector's purposes only. The glasses are still attached. It's perforated in here, but these are still attached. No, you can't have it. It's mine. Bootlegs. You'll never find bootlegs in a store that sells new recordings. They're illegal. Here's one, my favorite progressive rock group, Gentle Giant, a bootleg. Now you see this sticker here? The white square price sticker with the Sharpie price? That indicates it was from Nuggets. All of their albums are priced with that square white sticker. I bet if you went anywhere in Boston, anywhere music geeks gather and say, where do you get this record? He'd say Nuggets. Another one, Dave Mason. He was the guitarist in Traffic. And in 1970, he came out with his first solo album. Now this is, again, first edition. I don't know if you can see this whole thing. There's actually a little pinhole here. You can hang this on your wall. I don't know why you would. But it's kind of cool that it folds up, but that's not even the piece de resistance. Look at the vinyl. Okay. Other pressings, other pressings are just plain black. This is very, very cool. Again, probably cost me decent money back in the day, but what else am I going to spend it on? Clothes. Now, I just want to like run through some of the really good used record stores here and tell you what my favorite is. So first of all, there's Nuggets in Kenmore Square in Boston, which I told you about. Great, great place. Cheapo Records, which is in Central Square, Cambridge. Fantastic place. They've got everything. If it's ever been on vinyl, they have it. I once got a Jim Neighbors album in mint condition there. Don't believe me? Here it is. Stereo Jacks is in Porter Square, Cambridge. They specialize in jazz. So if that's your thing, that's the place to go. Stereo Jacks, and the owner's name is indeed Jack. There's a small but potent used record store in Union Square, Somerville called Grooves. They've got really good stuff and very friendly staff there. There's a couple places that they're good record stores. Whenever I've gone into them, it always is a bit punkier than my particular style. But In Your Ear in Boston and Looney Tunes in Allston are very good too. But my favorite used record store, as far as I'm concerned, the best one, is actually up in Salem, Massachusetts. It's called the Salem Record Exchange. Go there. The guy who runs it, his name is Paul. Go up to Paul and say, Jason sent you. Then pick yourself up off the sidewalk, go back in the store, and spend a lot of money. He's got some amazing stuff there. And he's just a super nice guy, very friendly, very knowledgeable. And that's pretty much all there is to say about it. Oh, did I talk about this? This is Boston's best college radio station, WERS, Emerson College. Again, you know, the kind of music that you find in a used record store, you're not going to hear on Top 40 radio, and you're not going to hear that here either. You can hear really good music. And Boston has lots of wicked good music. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jason. So last but not least, Randy is going to revisit the couple, the fictional couple that we were with in the Hipster coffee shop in Somerville. And they're going to be going back and basically they're working on their relationship by visiting a fetish festival. Randy, take it away.
Great, thanks, Judah. Before I get started, just to warn some of you folks, this has a little bit of racy material. It's a fetish conference. So again, the woman's name is Jackie, and yeah, the couple they did get back together. They're having some problems with their love life, so they decide to go to the fetish conference to try and get some ideas for how to spice things up. For what I figured to be a loose, laid-back event, the fetish conference is pretty uptight. At check-in, we're handed a square of paper with 4 red, thumb-sized peel and stickies. These go over the camera lenses on our phones. Privacy. A handout of don'ts includes public nudity, sex in the bathrooms, touching without permission, and misuse of personal pronouns. I skim a section on service animals and bodily fluids. The conference is in Rhode Island, the Nevada of New England, a state where prostitution was legal from 1980 to 2009. Inside the conference center, the event resembles any of the computer expos I attended as a writer for Personal Computing Week, and features booths and products, seminars and lectures, cliques and loners, and of course, cosplayers, witches, wenches, warlocks, guys in leather kilts, and women wearing chain link neckties. Jackie, my girlfriend, is wearing a spandex catsuit with a long tail, an outfit I've never seen before. From a previous life, she says. I leave it at that. She's dressed me in a dark suit, white button-down, rep tie, and tasseled loafers. You're my owner, she says. We stop at a booth for a surgeon specializing in body modification, carping ears like an attack dog, splitting tongues like a snake, restoring foreskins, removing nipples, and tattooing eyeballs. We skip a table for the Sex Workers Union of New England and stop at a paraphernalia booth. I scrutinize a piercing play kit with 20-gauge needles and a photo of what could be a spiny anteater or a scrotum stuck with 300 pins. Jackie fondles a pegging the sissy kit with a photo of a woman in a harness with a giant purple dildo. Jackie and I grab a conference program off a table and review the afternoon lectures. Lecture 1, non-monogamy, moresomes and gangbangs, elephant walks and double penetration, polyamory triangles, polyamory quads, polyamory pods. Swingers have sex, polys have conversations. Lecture 2, fluid play, sphincters and scat, fisting and lactating, mucus and urine, bukkake and bumpkins. There's no mention of Purell or hazmat suits. Lecture 3, breath play, choking and throttling, strangling and self-hanging, smothering with a pillow, smothering with a bag, making friends with your dry cleaner, smothering your dry cleaner, your friend, the carotid artery. Jackie takes my hands, wraps them around her throat, and makes faux gagging noises. In the seminar wing, we enter a long, dark hall of candelabras and closed doors. Feather dusters, bullwhips, and leather masks hang from the walls like medieval art. There's a water fountain and a bathroom, but I decide not to chance either one. A lecture called Domination for Dummies is a must-see. The lecture description: for tops, bottoms, switcheroos, and the undecided. The lecturers, a couple in normal jeans and collared shirts, lists their credentials. He's a pagan warlock bottom. She's a Wiccan Buddhist switch. The room darkens, a hushed quiet. I reach for Jackie's hand, a blinding light on the wall. A near-death experience? Worse, a PowerPoint presentation. Flogging and caning, biting and kicking, cock and ball tortures. I choke Jackie's hand. Ouch, you fuck, she yells. The audience laughs. A slide of a wooden X against a stone wall with a woman manacled by her wrists and ankles. St. Andrew's Cross, Jackie whispers. Then a slide of what looks like a padded sawhorse with ankle straps. The spanking bench, Jackie whispers. My girlfriend knows a lot more about sex than I do. Not cool. She's top and I'm bottom. The bondage slides. Ace bandage, mummification. Spread eagles, hog ties, frog ties, shrimp ties, reverse shrimp ties. I'm getting hungry. Jackie and I slip out a side door as the lecturers discuss safety, contracts, postmortems, and how yes means yes and anything else means no. Oy vey is mir, Jackie says. These people and all their rules. The next day, the couple tries out some of the things they've learned, but I'll save that for another day.
So we did say that this was Undercover Boston, so we got a little bit of a taste of the area, from coffee shops to a fetish conference in Rhode Island to a little taste of Providence Town and one of the best sandwiches in town. So thank you for joining us and getting a little sense of our Boston. We do want to mention that, again, that we're the New England Indie Authors Collective, and we are for writers. And as writers do, we have our books, which are on our website at NEIAC.org. And we have something called a 4-pack, where you can actually get one of each of our books for $50. So it's basically 4 books for the price of 5 or something like that. It's a deal. Yeah, I highly recommend the books. I may be a little biased, but I hear they're good. The other thing is we've created like a preview pack where you can actually get a taste of each of our books. And how do people get the preview if they see that you can actually download a PDF which has excerpts from each of our books. And hopefully, if you get that, you're going to be so entranced that you're going to want to buy the 4-pack, because you're going to need to read the whole book. I mean, you know, my mom did, and so there you go. So anyways, I hope you will check out our website and check out our work. And again, we want to thank the Canvas Fine Arts Gallery and Suzanne, and thank you all for coming, and be well, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us. Want to find out more? Check out our website at NEIAC.org. That's NEIAC.org, or on our Facebook page.